Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and finally we are here with the highly anticipated review of the brand new Mei Dragon Mech. And oh my goodness, LEGO Exo-Force really feels like it's back, and let me explain what I mean. You see, LEGO has been doing a ton of mech sets, especially over the past few years, but none of them have really radiated LEGO Exo-Force energy quite like this one. Because not only does the mech come with a full set of articulation, knees, ankles, elbows, you name it, but it also comes with an entire repair stand, something that we really only saw in Exo-Force sets, and not really in any other LEGO mech sets, especially in the modern times. If you don't know what Exo-Force is, Exo-Force was the original LEGO mech theme. You can see a ton of the mechs on the wall right here, where LEGO was first trying to play around with how they were able to make mechs work. They added all sorts of different stuff like repair bays and guard towers and guard gates, all sorts of different buildings that were kind of just built out of large-scale LEGO pieces, and that's exactly what's gone into this particular set. And so, let's dive into a full-on look and review of the incredible Mei Dragon Mech, and let me tell you why I feel like this is one of the best LEGO Monkey Kid mechs ever made. Alright, so this is set number 80053, Mei Dragon Mech. It retails for the kind of okay price of 100 US dollars here in the US, the pretty good price of 85 euros in Europe, and the very good price of 75 British pounds in the UK, meaning that the prices of this set are kind of all over the place, and much like the last Mei set that we got, for whatever reason, it's the most expensive here in the US. However, that being said, I definitely feel like the value is somewhat there, and we are going to be discussing value, the set itself, and all of that as we get into the review. Now to me, as I said at the beginning, this feels like a modern Exo-Force set, and I think the thing that really sells me on it is this. This feels like it came straight out of Exo-Force. It is a mech workshop area with little robots going around with cranes and all sorts of different tools to be able to add on to the mech itself. It is something that is pretty large, made up of just large one-off pieces, kind of like these large stanchions here. And this feels directly like something that would have come straight out of LEGO Exo-Force. Usually when the sets had a little bit overflow budget, they would include these structures and whatnot to allow you to kind of have a scene with your mech as well. And I actually really like that. It's been a while since we've gotten something like this for a LEGO mech, and this truly has some big Exo-Force energy with this build itself. But of course I do want to focus on the mech starting off, so we'll set this aside, and we'll set aside the side build as well, and just focus in on the main Mei Dragon Mech. Now this is, in my opinion, one of the best LEGO Monkey Kid mechs they have ever done. And we'll start off with the posability and articulation. Posability-wise, you can move the head back and forth on a ball joint and up and down, so this is fully mounted on a ball joint as well. You have the arms, which can be moved upwards, downwards, move inwards and outwards compared to the body on the newer style of ratchet joints, which they introduced just a couple years ago. You've got elbow joints, which can be rotated whatever which way that you want them to be, just pretty much standard articulation for the limbs like that. You can move around the sword in a nice manner. Unfortunately, the hands themselves are not on ball joints, so there is some limitation in the amount of articulation you can get in the way you swing the sword, but it's not that big of a deal because basically the hand is on an elbow joint anyway, so you can get it in all sorts of good positions if you want it to be in pretty much whatever position you would want. The legs, however, are probably the coolest part of the model to me because yes, this model has knees. And the way it accomplishes this are just basically two sets of Bionicle-style ball joints, which you can see articulating like that. It is a very good range of articulation, and for once, despite the fact that this model has knees, the feet are not actually restrained. Usually, they fully restrain the feet when they give models knees to allow you to move the knees, but not much else. But here, you can actually get a pretty decent range of articulation out of the feet themselves. Of course, you can move them front and back in a somewhat limited fashion. They didn't manage to limit the articulation in that sense, so you can only move it back and forth like this, but that's basically all you'll need. Like, that is almost all the articulation you're ever going to need for something like this, because if you move it forward and step to the side, you can also just angle it however you want. So this is a perfectly good pose that you can get the mech in, and that's really, really cool. I am very, very happy that they actually were able to integrate knees in a working mech, and it's one of the most posable and sturdy mechs that we've ever seen from LEGO in general. Honestly, kind of blown away some other Ninjago mechs. I still think Zane's Titan mech is better than this, just slightly because of the very innovative knee mechanism, but this comes very close. Now, speaking of Exo-Force energy, you have these staircase internal pieces being used as cannons, much like LEGO Exo-Force did back in the day. And the really cool thing is that this mech is kind of a power-up mech where each of these separate components, including the rocket boosters on the back, which again feel a lot like the Exo-Force Aero booster, are actually part of the side build. The side build here is a little bit of a jet for Monkie Kid himself, and you can attach those onto the jet. And that's what the side build looks like, leaving you with the main mech by itself. And honestly, I feel like I almost like it like this better than with the power-ups attached. I think it's really cool to have the giant cannons mounted on the shoulders of the mech itself, but this feels a lot more clean. Like you can get it into all sorts of interesting poses, it feels more lightweight without the gigantic cannons on it, and yeah, overall, I'm just really happy with the design of the mech. I'm really curious if I can get it into some sort of a kneeling pose. Maybe you can get it into like a superhero landing pose like this. Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. If only you could lift the head up more, but yeah, you can get this into all sorts of crazy poses if you want it to. Honestly, yeah, the head is actually a little bit limited. You can't move it upwards. That's really the only big complaint I have with the posability. But otherwise, this feels like a genuine bona fide LEGO action figure mech toy. You can do a lot of stuff with it, and I am very, very happy with the overall way that it turned out. Now, moving on to the shaping on the back of the mech itself, it's honestly nothing super crazy going on here. You have a tail that can be articulated on the Mixel-style mini ball joints on the back here. You've also got a very nice usage of the Spike Prime LEGO Technic connector pieces, which you can see right there, which is basically the way that they attach the arms, which is very, very cool. And of course, you do have the option of stud shooters on these shoulders as well. Obviously, the mech is meant to be built from the front and shown from the front, but I want to showcase what the side profile looks like, because I feel like this has a pretty interesting silhouette from the side. You can curve this cockpit outwards, utilizing the Ninjago core mech piece there, to place Mei in the cockpit of the vehicle, which is really cool that you actually have space for the pilot in a very nice manner. So let's just go ahead, put her in there like that, just kind of stands in there. Close it up, and there you go. Mei is piloting her own mech, and it does have the separate head, which I definitely like a lot better than when LEGO does mechs that basically use the minifigure heads as the heads, because it just makes them feel a little bit disproportionate. I like how this has its own head that you can use to look around, and one of my favorite details is that they even integrated the White Horse Dragon Blade hilt elements, which originated from Ninjago Hunted in 2018, as part of the mech itself. So you have that ornate dragon detailing integrated into the build, which is really, really cool, and I'm a big fan of how they pulled that off. The sword itself is honestly feeling a little bit short for the mech for me. I definitely feel like it would have been potentially more interesting to have maybe a different mold for the sword, or at least just a bit of a larger construction. It's alright, but we've seen the Prime Empire blade used as a sword in a ton of mechs before, especially smaller mechs than this, which makes it feel a little bit undersized given the style of this particular mech. It's not that big of a deal though, just something I did want to point out. Color scheme wise, the aesthetics are on point for this, as they usually are with Mei's Dragon Horse Jet and mechs and bikes and whatnot, and this is again no different. You have a really clean color scheme of the teal, the greens, the lighter greens, the bright greens, transparent greens, and white, all being factored into a really cool looking build. And again, you can take the side build and power it up, so let's just see that one more time in the fully powered up form. I'm going to take the blaster guns here, put them on the shoulders, which is really, really cool looking. And again, you can take that Exo-Force style Aero booster pack, stick it on the back of the jet, and there you have it. Now, the mech actually has these large Aero booster style jet packs on the back of it to allow it to take flight, which is very, very cool. Overall, this is a really, really solid mech set. And I could see this mech being sold by itself for maybe around 70 or 65 US dollars. I feel like that is pretty fair for this mech. It's not one of the huge gargantuan ones that they've done, it's a pretty fair size. So I feel like for this, 65 to 70 is pretty fair. But that's not all, because again, this is 100 US dollars, but it does also come with this, as well as the little side build as well. Now, this is normally something that in any other set I would be like, okay, well this is just a waste of budget. This is something that I don't really need and have no big use for, but for me, nah, this is actually really, really cool. Not only is this compatible with the Monkie Kid City sets, you have the 2 bits of Technic pins on one side and 2 on the other side that you can literally use it to connect to the other Monkie Kid City buildings. but this just screams LEGO Exo-Force energy. For those who got Sentai Fortress when maybe they were kids or young adults, which is one of the fondest memories I have of building a LEGO set, this feels like a mech assembly station, and I love how they included all sorts of different robots to actually be able to service the mech. We have a flying yellow one here with a jetpack, we've got a blue one on the back piloting the crane here, which I guess you can attach different bits and pieces onto. Oh, and I guess that is one way to attach the extra components. You can kind of like stick the gun barrel onto this and pretend that it's part of the assembly process to attach it onto the mech itself, and you even have a red one floating around here using the new Superheroes transparent clear curved element, doing some maintenance on the joints as well. This is perfectly scaled to the mech, and I love that they included something like this. It's just so cool, it's very nostalgic for me, and I completely understand that my opinions here are potentially very blinded and colored by nostalgia, but this is just so cool, and I'm glad they included it on a large-scale LEGO mech, because I feel like it's been years since LEGO has done something like this. Now, moving onwards, I do want to take a closer look at the side build, which is actually a pretty solid side build all in all things considered. Let's go ahead and take MK and place him into the side build itself, which is a very nice little charming speeder bike that almost feels like it came straight out of LEGO Space Police 3 or something like that. We're going to place him in the cockpit and place the weapons onto here. The good thing is that teal is a pretty significant part of Monkie Kid's color scheme as well, so the parts when added on don't feel that out of place on Mei's jet. But yeah, that's what this looks like, and this is actually a pretty solid speeder bike vehicle. I don't know if this is ever going to appear in the show, because many of these side builds have not actually appeared in the show, but this is just a really cool looking little Monkie Kid accessory type thing, which I'm a big fan of. I like the shaping, I like the usage of the hubcap pieces on the front of the vehicle itself. That is actually a printed grille element, which did not originate from the set. It actually came in some of the other larger creator vehicle sets, but overall, it's a really nice and charming thing. You even have the clouds going out of the back, because of course you have those as the jet exhausts, and it's just a cool looking speeder bike that feels very sci-fi, feels very futuristic, almost cyberpunk-esque, which is very cool. Even with all the extra pieces removed, which is of course to power up the mech, it doesn't feel incomplete. In fact, it feels maybe even more streamlined, that you can really see this as a speeder going along. It's got like the raised speeder energy from Star Wars The Force Awakens, which is definitely a good thing because that was a really cool model, and I like the way the side build worked in this. It's probably one of my favorite side builds in a while. Moving on from that though, I think it's time to take a look at the minifigures. We're going to start off with Monkie Kid himself because, well, I have him right here, but MK himself has received a new outfit for the next season of the show. However, for whatever reason, they have not even introduced any villains in the sets whatsoever, meaning that this is a pretty figure-light set. It only comes with 2 standard minifigures, and it counts the little robots as extra figures on the box, but honestly, I don't really see them as extra figures for me. On the back here, you have a nice cloud logo, which is a nice addition to Monkie Kid's color scheme. He, as usual, has the dual molded legs, which look fantastic, but honestly, it's not one of the more interesting ones. I think this one is just okay. Maybe the one black arm is signifying the monkey form that he had in the finale of the last season, but overall, it's just a pretty decent LEGO Monkie Kid minifigure. It's just another one of his designs. Mei, on the other hand, gets a really cool upgrade thanks to a brand new shoulder element introduced for her as well as for Monkie Kid in the other set that he comes in the wave. This is a very ornate shoulder element with dragons mounted on the sides of it, which look really cool. Look at that, or I guess those are maybe lions. Maybe those aren't dragons, but those are like lions mounted on the side, like Chinese-style lions, which looks so cool. This may be one of my favorite Mei suits yet, actually. You've got a beautifully metallic gold color scheme on the front, a almost Exo-Force style pilot suit, which is so cool and so detailed. You have the teal, the green, all integrated into the suit itself, and I feel like the only thing missing really is the helmet. I know she doesn't really ever use the helmet in the TV show anymore, but the helmet is literally built into the mech, and I feel like it would have been really cool to have her include a helmet piece, even just one of the older ones to be factored into the suit itself. But as it is, I do like it, and she does have the ultimate expression. There's no new headpiece made for Mei here, but those shoulder armor pads are something special and really cool. She has gone back to using her original dragon sword, which is interesting given that it was, spoiler alert, destroyed in the latest season and she had to craft a new one. But given that her new sword was crafted from a special weapons pack collectibles, I can see why they didn't use that piece, but it is still a little bit strange to see her go back to using the old downgraded sword. Now, she does have a special computer element with some different aspects of the mech featured on it. You can see the mech head on the computer sticker right there. It's a nice accessory for her to get, and overall this is a really special deluxe minifigure. Technically, these guys count as minifigs as well, although I don't really know if I would count them. You have an Octan-style fuel one right here, so I guess this one is adding in some fuel or grease to the mech itself, so that's a nice little addition for the Monkie Kid characters. You've got a flying one right here. This one is mounted on a transparent clear stand and is basically used with a jetpack to enact repairs and hover around the vessel. They almost feel like Monkie Kid's equivalent of like the mini picks or something like that, where you have these guys floating around just on their own stands. And lastly, you have this blue one right here, which I guess is maybe some sort of a magnetic type of thing, or I'm not quite sure what this is supposed to represent on the back, but this is also meant to kind of work on the crane. So they count these as minifigures on the box, and I don't know about that. I don't think these really count as minifigures. They're cute little droid. They kind of almost give me that classic space style of vibe with like little robotic droid helpers, but I don't know if I would count them as minifigures. As it is right now, the set only includes 2 of these standard minifigures, and I think that's a pretty good time to step back and talk about value. So value for the set is pretty interesting, because depending on what region you're in, this is either a very good deal, very well priced, or somewhat overpriced. And obviously, in the US, I definitely feel like this is somewhat overpriced. $100 for this feels just a smidge too high from what I'm really wanting to be paying for a mech like this. It is a really great mech. It may be one of the best Monkie Kid mechs we've gotten in a while, in a long time. I mean, we've been getting amazing Monkie Kid mechs, but this one is really posable, really fun to play with, has an excellent color scheme. It is long overdue for Mei to have her own mech. I'm just waiting for the Tang mech. Come on, when is the Tang mech coming? But no, I think it's definitely long overdue. It's a really good one. But for $100 US, it feels pretty steep. Again, this does come with how many pieces? It comes with 990 pieces. So price per part wise, that's like okay value. That is decent value. It's alright. But I definitely feel that this could have been sold in the US for the price it's being sold in Europe, 85 euros. Just convert that to $85, heck, maybe even make it $90, and I feel like that would have felt a lot nicer. Despite this coming with nearly 1,000 pieces, a lot of those pieces are very small. A lot of them are really tiny details factored into the set itself, and because of that, I definitely feel that maybe their price per part ratio is not the only thing to be considered here, and when I consider the volume of stuff ratio to what this actually is, I'm really feeling like $85 to $90 worth of stuff here. It's not egregiously overpriced, it's just kind of overpriced, and honestly, I probably wouldn't have even complained that much, other than the fact that we know that LEGO knows that this should not be $100 because it's 85 euros in Europe and it's 75 British pounds, which is a lot better. So I definitely do feel like this is somewhat overpriced, but it's not that bad compared to a lot of other LEGO sets on the market today. The X-Men jet. So, you know, compared to a lot of other stuff in LEGO's portfolio, this is actually pretty good value for $100 US. And I'm very, very happy with this build. It is one of the best LEGO Monkie Kid mechs that I've seen. It is so much fun to play with. It is so articulatable. It's so posable. That's pretty much all I have to say about this review of Mei's Dragon Mech. Super curious if you feel that the value is there. Are you going to get this one for $100? Have you already? And what do you think of the set if you already own it yourself? Alright, and with that we have summed up our look at the incredible new Mei's Dragon Mech. Maybe a little bit overpriced in the US, but it's actually pretty good value everywhere else. Big fan of how they pulled this one off. This one really gives me those Exo-Force vibes, and let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to stay tuned for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Bye for now.